Hello and welcome to Spectrum News 02. I am Beat O'Brien coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakoroan. Let's take a look at the headlines. President Muhammadu Buhari says nobody will be allowed to destabilize Nigeria. NECO reschedules entrance examination into Unity schools. Russia gives new deadline to Ukrainian troops in Mariupol. Details of these stories and more in a moment. We'll begin the news on our bulletin this afternoon with a report that President Muhammadu Buhari has urged Nigerians to resist agents bent on causing breakdown of law and order, and has assured that no individual or group will be allowed to destabilize Nigeria. Buhari, who made the statement at the Iftar dinner with state governors, ministers and heads of government agencies, expressed the confidence that in spite of the current security challenges, the country will succeed. On the forthcoming general elections, he affirmed that being a beneficiary of free and fair and credible elections, the introduction of technology and the permanent voters' cards will make it impossible for anyone to claim millions of votes again in the country. Away from that, the presidency and the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation has passed the buck over the refusal of ministers, ambassadors and aides to the president to resign ahead of the governorship and presidential primaries of the All Progressive Congress APC, which commenced on May 25. This is just as the Minister of Labour and Employment, Senator STVNg, has declared his intentions to contest the presidential election. Reports say Secretary to the State Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, ought to have issued a circular stating a deadline on when appointees of the president should resign. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the commissioning of the ongoing construction of the Owerri-Olu and Owerri-Okigwe roads upon completion next month. This was disclosed by Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma after a courtesy visit to the president at the Villa for a progress report on the ongoing road construction and projects in the state. Reports say the roads, which are federal roads, are currently being reconstructed with dual carriage for the Owerri-Olu road and the expanded width for the Owerri-Okigwe road as approved by the president. Away from that, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has commended the move by the International Criminal Court, ICC, to reform its system as part of efforts to mend relations with African countries. Osinbajo stated this when he received the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, who was on a courtesy visit to the presidential villa in Abuja. He said the proposal to reform the international justice system would reassure African countries that there is room for negotiations and that the ICC is not just out to witch hunt any individual or organization. The vice president stressed the need to create a system that builds relationships and credibility among member states. Away from that, Minister Niger Delta Affairs Godswill Akpabio has reiterated the commitment of the federal government to provide healthcare services to ameliorate the challenges faced by the Niger Delta people in accessing facilities in their communities. The minister, who was represented by Deputy Director, Housing and Urban Development, Ndukwe Ukpai, made the pledge at the inauguration and handing over of block of health centers at the Idem Ishet in Ona local government area of Akwa Ibom State. He mentioned that rural residents often encountered barriers to health care that limits the ability to obtain the care they need, noting that for rural residents to have sufficient access, necessary and appropriate health services must be available and obtainable in a timely manner. To politics now, where ahead of the 2023 general elections, Minister of Labour and Employment STVNg has formally declared his intention to contest for the position of President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Ngige unveiled his presidential ambition before a crowd at the St. Mary's Catholic Church, Alo, Idemili South local government area of Anambra State. Addressing the crowd comprising APC faithfuls and other supporters, the former Anambra State governor said, having served 40 years in public service, he was fully equipped as an administrator with huge wealth of experience, capacity and energy, as well as the heart to accommodate the differences amongst Nigerians. Still in politics, President Muhammadu Buhari has met with governors of the All Progressive Congress APC over the forthcoming national convention of the party slated for March 26. Speaking with State House correspondents at the end of the meeting, Chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum, who is also the governor of KB State, Atiku Bagudu, said the governors had resolved to support whoever the president supports at the convention. Reports say the governors were led to the meeting by the chairman of the interim committee of the party and governor of Yobe State, Maimala Buni. Away from that, a regional stakeholders workshop on operationalization and institutionalization of the network of West African women in conflict prevention and mediation, FEMWISE West Africa, has kick-started today in Lagos. The 3-day workshop is expected to explore strategic advocacy tools, capacity building, and networking that will enable the implementation of the regional commitments for women's inclusion in conflict prevention and peacemaking progresses at all levels. Reports say the workshop would also review and validate relevant documents, including a draft statute that defines the mandate, function, and strategic engagements of FEMWISE West Africa, a draft standard operating procedure, and knowledge management framework, amongst others. Meanwhile, the workshop would afford FEMWISE West Africa steering committee members the opportunity to effectively operationalize the objectives of its network in line with the AU Agenda 2063, the United Nations Security Council Resolution on Women, Peace and Security, and Global Sustainability Development Goals, SDGs. Recall that in 2017, FEMWISE Africa was established by the African Union AU, assemblies of heads of state within the context of the African Peace and Security Architecture, APSA, as a subsidiary mechanism of the AU panel of the WISE to strengthen the role of women in conflict prevention and mediation, as well as peacemaking, post-conflict reconstruction and development efforts, while encouraging the regional economic communities to establish a same structure. And now to education, where the National Examination Council, NECO, has rescheduled the 2022 National Common Entrance Examination, NCE, into federal unity colleges from April 23 to May 7, 2022. Head Information and Public Regulations Division at NECO, Aziz Sani, disclosed this in a statement in Abuja. The council explained that the examination was rescheduled to give states with low registration of candidates the opportunity to register their candidates for the examination. NECO therefore advised candidates, parents, guardians, and relevant stakeholders to take note of the new date for the examination, download the new examination timetable from the council's website at www.neco.gov.ng. Meanwhile, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, will meet with the nation's security community under the auspices of Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security, ICCES. NECO's outgoing resident electoral commissioner, Mike Igini, says security is a big issue ahead of the 2023 general election. Recall that INEC has been on the receiving end during the election period. And now to more news on security, where bandits have threatened to kill more people, especially women, if their demands for a 20 million ransom are not met. Dutse community monarch in a statement said the bandits who invaded the community killed 2 residents and abducted 26 persons. They have also threatened to cause more havoc if their demands are not met. Confirming the incidents, Chief of Angwa Bulus community, Gideon Goni, called security agents and government to come to their rescue. Meanwhile, the State Police Command spokesperson, Mohammed Jalige, who confirmed the incident, said police was on top of the situation. Back here on news from the home front, residents within Uyo metropolis have decried the state of major roads that have been destroyed by erosion within the state. Speaking with Spectrum Television, the people called on the state government to fix the roads in order to make life easier for all citizens. Our correspondent now brings you more on this report.
With the rains coming in heavily, waterways need to be evacuated to make way for waters to flow through. Unfortunately, a lot of drainages have been blocked with people disposing sachet water nylons, PET bottles, and other materials that can't be decomposed into drainages, as well as erecting buildings on waterways. Since water has to find a passage, it eventually results in washing away roads and causing erosion on these roads. Although the Akwa Ibom State government would be commended for its efforts on infrastructure, several roads within the states can be seen washed off and broken. Among them are Ikpa Road, Atiampat, and others becoming immotorable as half of the road have been washed off by erosion. Citizens who spoke with Spectrum Television decried the state of these roads and the effect it has had on them.
Tetuguni yak ayari kunu fo wa ku kunu ke remeko ira amaka isoko nyongere memara keke era kan kongo wa nyi ba en kongo mi imi bo fene tieti.
Sometimes ago, like last year, I heard some persons were being robbed. Before now, this was like it was very deep where people need to go down and swipe up and all those stuff. When it's dark like that, you get hoodlums hanging around, looting people's bag. And there was also a time where we had to get and turn around this other Atiam part. It was also very stressful.
They also pleaded with the state governments to attend to this road speedily to make life easier and prevent further loss of lives and properties.
State. It is same banganyan.
This is a major road that links to about 2 to 3 communities. We have Nduetongoku, we have Iba, and also we have Oran. And for instance, if this road is not fixed snappily, it's like this side of the state is being detached from the state actually.
Obviously, a lot needs to be done by the government to make this basic amenity accessible, as well as sensitization for the citizens to acknowledge the part they play in this crisis. Edidion Martin, reporting for Spectrum Television.
Thanks, Edidion Martins. And now to news from Africa, where 2 more combat helicopters and surveillance raiders have arrived in Mali on a Russian cargo flight. The consignment brings to 8 the known number of helicopters that Moscow has provided on the closer ties forged by colonels who ceased power in 2020. Mali's defense ministry said 4 similar deliveries are expected over the next 3 months. Meanwhile, the French army has officially handed over the keys of the Gossi base in northern Mali to the Malian armed forces, a major step in the departure of the Barkhane anti-jihadist force from the country. Still in Africa, agricultural workers in Ethiopia, Kenya and Somalia are preparing for the most severe drought in 40 years. This occurs as authorities have warned that higher temperatures and less than normal rainfall have been recorded by weather agencies in March and April this year. According to the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, rains would likely fail for a 4th consecutive year, triggering fears of increased cases of malnutrition, threats to livelihoods, and severe risks for 29 million people in the region. Reports say 29 million people are facing high levels of flood insecurity, according to the latest experts' estimates, adding that 1.4 million children under the age of 5 in the Horn of Africa are vulnerable to acute malnutrition. Still to come on our news bulletin this afternoon, Eagles draw Sierra Leone, Guinea-Bissau, Sao Tome in AFCON qualifiers. Do stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on Spectrum News at this hour. And now to news from the foreign scene, where Russia has given a new deadline to Ukrainian troops in Mariupol to surrender. But Ukraine has vowed to continue to defend the port city. Russian-backed fighters are reportedly trying to storm the Arovstal steelworks, where Ukrainian troops and civilians are said to be holding out. Meanwhile, Deputy Mayor of Mariupol says there are many civilians stuck in the besieged Arovstal factory. Still on the foreign scene, United States and allies have agreed to impose more sanctions on Moscow as Russia pushed ahead with its new offensive targeting eastern Ukraine in the latest phase of the bloody invasion. Russia's defense ministry has said high-precision air-based missiles have hit 13 Ukrainian positions in parts of Donbass, while other airstrikes have hit 60 military assets in towns close to the eastern front line. Meanwhile, Ukraine's armed forces says fighting has increased throughout the east after President Volodymyr Zelensky announced Russia had kicked off the widely anticipated offensive in Ukraine's industrial heartland. On our business news, the increase in global oil prices has caused the International Monetary Fund (IMF) to review Nigeria's economic growth potential to 3.4% in 2022. IMF disclosed this in its World Economic Outlook April 2022 reports. Recall that in its January report, the Washington-based lender predicted a growth rate of 2.7% for Nigeria in 2022, but it has adjusted its projection based on increasing oil prices. Meanwhile, IMF latest forecast has revealed a 3.1% growth projection for the nation in 2023, down from 3.4% in 2022 and 3.6% in 2021. Still on business news, a not-for-profit group, Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisor, has called for concerted efforts to eliminate the gender gap in access to financial services in Nigeria. During a webinar organized by the Gender Center for Excellence, the civic group said that ensuring financial inclusion for women requires a broad-based institutional reform that puts gender equality on the front burner. The group said individuals and institutions were evolving and recognizing that the biases, stereotyping, and discrimination do exist and have negative impacts on the overall development as individuals and society. The webinar, which was held to mark this year's International Women's Day, was organized in collaboration with the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN), Enhancing Financial Innovation and Access, Lagos Business School, and the Women's World Banking. In health, the National Vice President Association of Psychiatrists of Nigerian Doctors, Veronica Namali, has advised Nigerians not to see suicide as an option to escape life's challenges. Nyamali, who gave the advice during an interview with newsmen in Lagos and urged people to always see life from a mixed angle of good, sweet and bad, said Nigerians should learn to take life easy by developing positive coping and adaptive mechanisms, rather than considering negative thoughts like attempting suicide or engaging in domestic violence when faced with challenges. According to the psychiatrist, mental health education can make people understand life generally comes with challenges and can be good, sweet at one time and bad at another. And now to news from sports, where Wimbledon has banned Russia and Belarusian players from the championship over the invasion of Ukraine, with men's number 2 Daniil Mendev and Ariana Sabalenka among 5 of the sport's top 40 stars shut out. Reports say Russian and Belarusian tennis players will be banned from playing at Wimbledon. Meanwhile, UK Sports Minister Nigel Huddleston says players have to be genuinely neutral. Still in sports, 3-time African champions Nigerian have been paired with Sierra Leone, Guinea-Bissau, Sao Tome, and Principe in Group A of the qualifiers for the 2023 African Cup of Nations, AFCON. The 34th edition of the biannual African Football Showpiece is scheduled to hold from June 23 to July 24, 2023 in in Côte d'Ivoire. A total of 48 countries, including host Ivory Coast, are eligible to feature in the final stage of the qualifiers scheduled to begin in June across the continent. On our entertainment news, Nollywood stars, friends and fans and Kingsmen converged at Rita Dominic's country for her traditional marriage. As the actress tied the knot traditionally with her fiancé Fidelis Anosike, the traditional marriage was held at her late father's compound, the home of the traditional ruler of the community, Eze Marcelinus J.O. Mwatorocha. Reports say Rita's husband is the chairman, board of directors and folio group owners of Daily Times and Miss Nigeria pageant. Still on our entertainment news, veteran filmmaker Adebayo Salami, aka Oga Bello, and a good number of his colleagues are in high spirits as the Lagos state government has granted 37 of them 200 million interest-free loans. It is in fulfillment of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu's promise to fund the creative industry, upon which he raised a community of stakeholders. The governor, who was represented by the Commissioner for Tourism, Art and Culture, Uzamat Akimbilie Yusuf, during the presentation of the checks to the 37 beneficiaries at the Globe Memorial Hall, Lagos, said the initiative aims to address financial challenges that inhibit quality production of films in Lagos and Nigeria. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, STVNg. You have been watching Spectrum News at 2. I am Bito Brian, thanking you for watching. Do have a good afternoon.